Welcome to this week's Treasury Career Corner podcast, where I interview Treasury professionals about their Treasury careers. Each and every week, I'll talk to treasurers about how they built their careers, where they are now, where they see both themselves and the Treasury profession going to next. Let's get on with the show. In this week's show, delighted to be joined by Dennis Morais, the Global Treasury Director at GameStop. GameStop offers games, entertainment products, and technology through its e-commerce properties and stores. But they're not just brick and mortar retailers anymore. But we're going to go back to the beginning of his career, how Dennis first ever started in Treasury. And obviously it's taken him right the way around the world. And this is one of the things I want to explore, all the way from Brazil and everything else. So Dennis, if you would, take us back to the beginning of your story, how you then discovered finance and then moved into Treasury. Over to you, sir.
Hi, Mike. Thank you. Been an honor to be part of your show here. Thanks for having me. I started my career back in São Paulo, Brazil. Straight out of college, I joined Whirlpool Corporation. I joined the Treasury Department team there. I was mainly working with the risk management insurance team there. Immediately got fascinated about risk management, Treasury, and I already could picture myself as becoming an executive of the company and working for a multinational organization, which was part of one of my dreams here when I was going to college. I was always very eager to learn and curious and how to learn about different areas of the organization. And obviously I had a great, manager within Treasury at that time. And he was really a mentor for life for me. So that helped me a lot.
And then when you did this, though, you started in Brazil, didn't you? So this is Latin America, because I think that's where you're from. But what was it like there and how did it compare to the rest of your career through the US and stuff? What was that like? How was it structured?
Sure. Yeah. So we were, being in São Paulo was the headquarters of the Latin American region for Whirlpool. Obviously, everything that we did within Treasury and risk management was following some of the global programs that Whirlpool had globally. Brazil, I think, was a very important part of the business for Whirlpool, leading market share and within the Latin America region. In Treasury, obviously, it was more focused on cash management, insurance, and more of the operations aspect. Back in 2005, 2006, Whirlpool acquired Maytag, and they were going through this major integration process there. That was when an opportunity came up here in Benton Harbor, Michigan, as part of their global treasury team within risk management still. And they reached out to me if I wanted to be part of, as an expatriate, come to the US. I didn't think one bit. I was like, yes, I would love to come and learn. And I knew that, a lot of the exciting things was happening at corporate level. So didn't think twice. I moved back in 2006. That's when I came as an expatriate to Benton Harbor, Michigan. My first 2 years, I was helping with the integration about the merger with Maytag. During that process, even though I was doing risk management insurance, I would always offer myself to help with doing the quarterly financial close process. I would be part of helping with their working capital, dashboards, metrics, anything they need help with. I would be around and help them and trying to learn other things within the company. On the third year, they would ask you to rotate and move to a different area as part of your development program. That's when I went and I moved to an FP&A, budgeting and forecasting role within the North American region. It was a very good opportunity for me to learn, and it exposed me to accounting and finance. I had a very good experience of going through the budgeting and forecasting planning exercise. That was especially back in 2008 during the financial crisis, a lot of budget cutting and a lot of things that I think the US was going through, and being part of that process. A little bit of stress involved there, obviously, but it was very good experience for me to learn and be part of that initiative and help the company, right size and go through that financial situation that we all went through. During that whole process, I clearly developed a lot of different ties within the controllers, teams, and other areas of the organization. I told them that my desire was still to stay in the United States, not necessarily go back to Brazil, where was my home country, because I felt like that's where the action was. I wanted to be part of that corporate. I still had unfinished business, especially in Treasury. I expressed my desire. Fortunately, I was able to stay there, continue to still work within FP&A, budgeting and forecasting, But I also feel that that was a great experience for me to learn that my passion was with treasury. Even though I learned about accounting, finance, and treasury was really where my heart was. And always kept very close ties with the treasurer at that time with the treasury team.
Whirlpool itself, can you just, at that time, I know it's been through transition with the Maytag, and I was just thinking, crumbs, for some of the people listening, they're going, Whirlpool, what was the breadth of the products you guys did? Or bring that to life, if you would.
Yeah, absolutely. So Whirlpool still, I think they're one of the largest, if not the largest, home appliance manufacturer. They do washers, dryers, refrigeration. They have the whole cooking. KitchenAid is one of their premier brands, about, stand mixers and countertop appliances. So massive exposure worldwide with manufacturing plants across the globe in US, Europe, Asia, and Latin America, Brazil. That was, I think at that time, they were a very, very large organization, 18, 19 billion. I think they're probably even larger now. And again, being part of that corporate experience was fascinating to me. I still was in FP&A, but I really learned that my heart was settled in treasury and wanted to go back. So
Why was Treasury over FP&A? I know why, because I do a Treasury podcast every single week for 200 plus weeks. Because I love it and the way that you guys are focused on the future and all the exciting things you do. But that's from my, sitting here in this chair. Why did you go, yeah, Treasury's for me?
I felt like, forgive me, all my FP&A and accounting friends, but treasury is a lot more than transaction and recording things. And I think we from a treasury in sync every day with the markets, really, I think we see at first glance everything that happens, whether there's volatility in the currency, commodities, where inflation, investments are changing your balance sheet. So I feel that treasury, we have a very good pulse to the business. And I'd even say this to my team, don't underestimate any of our roles here, because every penny that comes into the door for a balance sheet and goes out touches our hands, and we have the opportunity to make a difference and interpret that and see what's happening with the market and help the company make the right decisions. So I felt that way. I feel this way about treasury. That's why I love it. So again, then I was trying to go back to treasury. I remember, like, another fun fact, when I made the decision to stay in the United States through that mortgage crisis, Brazil, China, remember India, they were like skyrocketing and they were booming. It was kind of completely different ship worldwide. And everyone, we even questioning, my friends and family questioning my decision. Like, no, you're sure? Say, I felt in my heart that there were unfinished business here. That's when an opportunity came within the procurement finance organization within Whirlpool. Again, going back to being a manufacturer of appliances, a lot of exposure to raw materials. They had a very robust commodity hedging program. So I was offered this role to go and help within the organization to assist with their commodity hedging program. That's when, Mike, I tell you that I really learned about financial risk management.
Yeah.
And that gave me an opportunity to learn about hedge accounting and market changes, a lot of things, how even being part of the procurement organization at that time, really understand the contracting, the negotiation part, but also how to ensure that we can secure and manage the risk from balance sheet perspective for an organization worldwide, right? So that was also very, very interesting. Soon I was offered a position to kind of formally go back to treasury, where I was not only doing the commodity hedging trading program, but also I was involved and I had a team, one person working in my team, and we were responsible for the cash desk for Whirlpool for the North American region. That's when I got immediately involved with liquidity management, funding the company, executing on intercompany loans, bank relationships, management, commercial paper program that Whirlpool had it at that time. And it was great. It opened a lot of different doors for me within Treasury. And they also had a Treasury workstation at that time, which was a little bit still something very new within, I think, Treasury. So I was really happy and learning a lot more about Treasury. I was like in heaven. We're and this is, I think, part of being part of that big organization where they promote a lot of growth and whatnot, I was told that there were going to be some changes within the Treasury Department, and I was going to most likely be moved to a different role other than Treasury. And that made me a little like, I'm really enjoying this
Hey, you
what I'm
found your passion
doing.
and they're taking you away from it.
Right, right. So, but those coincidences about life, because my wife, which also worked for Whirlpool in a different department, she doesn't do finance or treasury.
Hmm.
She had a received job offer with relocation to come to New Jersey.
Oh, wow.
And that was when we sat down and say, oh, maybe this is the sign as the opportunity for me to maybe look for different things in treasury. And then I scratched my head and I thought to myself, if we move to the East Coast, New York area, and I don't find a job within treasury, I probably need to change my career. I need to find something. Before we even moved, fortunately, I was offered a position to work for a consulting firm, CIT. Now they're owned by First Citizens Bank, I believe. But, they were doing a massive re-engineering or replanning of the entire treasury team. And
Dennis, who was
what they were
CIT? Just again for the audience.
CIT, they were at that time, had the two arms. One was their banking part, and they also had financial lending business. They pretty much provide financing, accounts receivables, factoring.
And looking back at that time and you'd been corporate for 13, 14 years. What was it like for you to step into that sort of banking, liquidity type role? Quite a shift to you, I would say. Would that be right?
That's a great point, Mike. It was quite a shift. I came through this very traditional manufacturing Midwest company, very strong. Then I was all of a sudden in front of this very different, very fast, dynamic financial services company where all different type of products that I didn't even, and it was a very big change of learning, and putting your best foot forward and addressing any questions. I think it was a great time for me to really learn completely a new industry.
Then you made that move from financial services to then that CIT to ProSite. Can you explain about them or then the progression? Because was that exactly the same or was it different? What was the key?
I then came up for this very fast growing privately held insurance organization to lead their treasury teams. They were growing and putting the infrastructure together, nowhere to hide, had to roll up my sleeves and really learn. It was also, I think, a fascinating opportunity for me. And I felt like, okay, maybe that's a place where I can make a huge difference here.
Well, tell me about insurance because I've recruited senior people for insurance companies. I've recruited for both an insurance group where it's about household policies, about houses and various other bits. And then I've also recruited the life insurance companies where it's very different. Did you have that or what was it like, particularly ProSite?
Absolutely. So I think the CIT experience kind of helped me lead the way, but insurance very regulated, very like to your point. I mean, there's a lot of things when you're dealing with insurance and the risk or the claims that you probably going to face throughout a specific year, they can come up out of the blue. Obviously, coming to a different balance sheet structure, right? Very cash rich balance sheet heavy. And this is where I think obviously, and helped me in my career to get exposed more to the capital market investment, right? For every dollar that comes in, how are you going to first put that money to work as soon as possible? That actually was very fascinating. I really also liked the fact that I moved to a large infrastructure organization to a very lean. That's when I think I became to learn how to really multitask and from releasing wires to really speaking with the CFO and CEO about what's the vision about the department and how we're there's different projects and products that they're thinking about launching next year and how we're gonna support that. That's kind of where I think learning, and again, as I mentioned, the investment part of the capital markets really detail how those interest rate moves affect directly your business and how cash flow forecasting being a little bit challenged, but how you put that money to work and maximize your return as much as possible.
And Dennis, how do you protect against those bumps in the road in the right way? Good thing is because you've had that depth of corporate treasury experience and now you're in insurance treasury, how do you see them as differently?
Right.
Do you see it in a similar way or how would you contrast it? Again, this is for the listeners out there, particularly in the more junior stage and thinking, oh, been offered, we've recently recruited a couple of people from corporates into insurance groups and we've had to explain that to them. How would you
Right.
characterize it?
I feel like that's where, again, and I've been fortunate enough earlier in my career when I was there doing hedging and financial risking. That's, I think, your risk management, I think, hat needs to be put on and really think about how to really develop a strategy where first learning the risk appetite from, I think, the stakeholders, the company and the board, and really determining, trying to, okay, I always like to slice in two segments when you're doing risk management or financial risk management about, okay, what is that chunk of your policy or your program that you want to be very conservative, very like not be very crazy about it. Let's, make sure that you have some certain protections around. You're probably not going to get the best out of it, right? You're not going to get the highest, but then you define that other part of it to really go a little bit crazy and really try to be a little bit more sophisticated, but then it could be or downsides, right? So, and trying to be very pragmatic about it. The conversations and really learning about the appetite, especially I think for us, especially when you're in those type of roles and working for companies that have a huge exposure, or even in our personal lives, right? We sometimes say things, but it doesn't really transpire to exactly how we perceive risk or our appetite for risk is. So that's, I think it's very important for you to spend time and really define your policies and your, strategy and put it in a piece of paper as black and white as possible and share with the company and everyone
Yeah,
because, you know, things change. It will change, right? We know the market changes crazy. So, and to your point, you can be a traditional treasury professional working into very like robust different companies and products. But I think when you go to the financial services, insurance companies, regulated and very prone to risk, it could be dramatically by interest rate changes, volatility. I think it changes a little bit, the profile, the risk profile of the organization. And you need to, I think, to adapt.
Then you've
Yeah.
still got a couple more moves. So talk us through.
Yeah, yeah. So then I was at ProSite I was there for almost 5 years, 4.5 years I think the company doubled in size while I was there, grew the team. But then through my network, I came a good friend of mine actually told me about this opportunity at a retail children's place that they were looking for someone to step in and help with, they were going through Treasury Workstation implementation, few changes within the organization. I felt that was a perfect opportunity for me to get back to the public company environment with exposure to US and Canada at that time for Children's Place. I felt it was the right move for me and I don't regret one bit. It was fascinating, changing industry. I loved learning new things. And that's when I moved to Children's Place. Children's Place was retail and Children's Place was trying to really develop their e-com platform more on the getting rid for the brick and mortar type of infrastructure to move more to the e-com. And there was no joke. They were right on. And till this day, it's like my role at GameStop. Retail, I tell everyone, it's a fascinating world, very dynamic, especially now how information flows so quickly now and how changes need to happen for you to win at the marketplace, right? It was a great experience for me. It was there, then COVID hit. And we know, right? COVID, obviously, we had to make some very tough decisions there. It was cash flow forecasting became a very, very critical part of the business there, making sure we pretty much had to change the whole process into more survival mode and very tough decisions had to be made. And during COVID, just navigating through, revisiting all our that capital structure. Again, very, very stressful. Very looking back now, actually, I don't regret one bit, but it was very challenging. But then, throughout this whole kind of coming out of COVID and whatnot, I was presented this opportunity at GameStop. GameStop, it is almost 3 times larger than Children's Place. We have a huge presence in Europe, Australia, New Zealand, Canada, and US. And I think learning and meeting with the GameStop folks and understanding what the company was going through and kind of Treasury was no different.
I touched on GameStop. Obviously, GameStop, without going too much into detail, it's been through, headline press at one stage. and you've gone in there and been part of that or lived through it. What's it been like for you since you came on a joint? Because I was going to talk about more about the fact that we're in a new world where you got stuff like crypto coming out at you. You've got
Right.
NFTs. You've got everything. What's it been like for you getting your head around all that stuff?
Yeah, no, it's been great. I've never worked for a company where I say like I'm with GameStop and everybody's like, "Wow, yeah, I know GameStop." It's been interesting that everywhere I go, and once people realize I work for GameStop, everybody knows exactly who we are and what we've been doing. But you're right. I think the management team, and we've been very thoughtful about it, and we don't let all this momentum or distraction, if you will, impact on our day to day. We have a very specific mission and we have a strategy we're going after. I know that sometimes, given everything that's happening, it doesn't become sometimes very public known that how things are. But I think we've been putting our best foot forward and right decisions have been, we're still continuing making the right decisions. You also mentioned about the crypto NFT. This is also an area I didn't even know about it until I joined the company, and developing that marketplace and going through all the changes that are happening on a daily basis and managing wallets and understanding the risk aspect to that, what kind of exposure are we going to have, how we manage that program that we're developing, and how has that to do with our existing policy? How does that match to our risk profile, as I mentioned earlier? So it's been really fascinating.
And looking, you've got so much in your background. It's great. It's like Treasury, Treasury. Where do you see Treasury going to next? Obviously, we've been through challenging times, came through COVID and now it came out. And then just as we were getting our breath back, obviously global events happened, which have thrown a lot of challenges. We've got inflationary risks. We've got, salaries taking off. We've just done our latest salary survey, which has really shown that. What are you, though, as a treasurer looking at, or as a finance leader in some ways? More, is it your team development? Is it all the other things that are coming at you? What are the key things you're focusing on?
Yeah, I feel that, with technology and the way the pace the world now evolves, it's no different in Treasury. I think as I try to look back, we would always try to understand from our cash flows and what was happening with our industry or our cash and whatnot. You always try to look back, and it's right now it has to be we from a treasury perspective, and we need to know right on the spot, like every day, where's our cash, what happened last week, and developing that infrastructure around which I feel like with the advance in technology, with the new treasury workstations around, the new technology that banks are providing, that I think is key to learn. But also, as you mentioned, a very important aspect about the people development, right? The young talent that's coming in, how to have them not only learn about the technical aspects about treasury, but also how to use technology towards your advantage. And it's not more technology on the aspects or I need a support from my IT team where I need a special consultant to know how do oftentimes we're going through a massive implementation now, but you as a treasury analyst, how can you learn how to program the system, maybe make changes and create that cash flow statement we need now with the balances that came last night? How can you roll up your sleeves and really be resourceful from that standpoint? So I see that treasury, the pace is very different right now. For you to be, I think, very successful as a treasurer, I think you need to have the pulse on your cash flows, your working capital, and that requires you really knows how the business is operating, what's the technology available to get you to have that information ready for you to analyze, and also obviously having the treasury background or the skill set to really help you make the right decisions.
And how do you encourage that with your junior team members? I'm really interested in this piece. How do you as a treasurer, you've got all these challenges to be you and the team. How do you manage that, coach them? How do you do it?
Yeah, I think also trying to obviously challenge the status quo. Again, trying to be resourceful, as I've mentioned, learning, okay, if we're supposed to, and I'll give you examples that we're going through right now. Okay, we are feeding all this bank information to our system, and this is supposed to create some cash posting entries. And also we're trying to leverage that to really understand how's our working capital metrics going. And if there's issues to that process, instead of you like, oh, I need to get IT involved, I need accounting to help me, like, no, how can you be ahead of the curve here, really understand how the programming of that information is working? And maybe you, because what you know exactly how the trend has been, oh, this information used to go this way. And because the bank changed something and now it's causing us to have a different output of the data. Step to it, encouraging them to, I think, not only learn the technical aspect of their job, but also from a technology and from even an accounting aspect, really to how to be prepared and really
Have that questioning mindset as well. We're going to put your LinkedIn details in the show notes, Dennis. So I know that lots of people are going to want to connect to you. Would you, if you like, wrap up today's show for me and just go through, we touched on a little bit there about coaching the team and everything else, but what takeaways would you give for anyone listening today?
I feel like for you to be successful, you always have to be curious, eager to learn, address the elephant in the room if there's one. Don't be shy, or encourage you to ask the right questions at all times. And as I said, I think being part of the Treasury team of our organization, we have the privilege to really understand how the business is doing sooner than a lot of folks in the business. So don't be afraid of asking the questions and learning and being curious about it. I think Treasury has a great community. There's a lot of mentors around there, and then be involved as much as possible.
Love it. Stay curious. And that so many times, but I really think it resonates every time.
Thank you so much, Mike. I really appreciate the time and really, really honored to be here.
Pleasure. Thanks very much. So I'm rejoined by Dennis Morais. Dennis, when I last spoke to him, he was with GameStop, but now we're catching up a year or so later. And any of you who have just listened to the original podcast, you got some great value there. But actually, we're bringing Dennis's story up to date. Dennis, what's happened since we last caught up? Over to you, sir.
Hi, Mike. Thanks again for having me here. This is fantastic podcast that I love to be part of it. So thanks for having me. Great. So yes, a little bit has changed. I now work for Valvoline. I joined as an assistant treasurer for Valvoline. When we last spoke, I was at GameStop, and it's been a little over a year. It's been a great transition for me. It's still within retail. Valvoline went through a separation from a global product business to heavily invest on retail. So Valvoline is expanding, opening stores almost every day, and kind of with a lot of more emphasis in retail. And I think that's where I think my experience within Treasury and retail has been key and a great opportunity for me to, contribute and add some value here for Valvoline. We implemented HANA.
Actually, before I'm going to jump in there, I'm going to say, so you and I both know Valvoline. Oh, I know it. I knew it more as an oil brand, but as you said, it sort of moved more to retail. Can you explain why or what that's in? It's about vehicle maintenance and all the other things. Explain who the company is now or what they are now, if you would.
Absolutely. So we are the leader preventive maintenance, I think, retail, quick lube oil, I think retail, business so Valvoline was separated. We sold the global product to Aramco, which is what you see, like the oil that you buy at the Walmart or the stores. Yeah. And then we are now pretty much opening the preventive maintenance stores where you can go have a 15-minute oil change, and we check your wiper blades, everything, cabin air filter, anything that your vehicle may require. So with that separation, obviously, we had to create a pretty much new standalone business, and that's kind of the journey what has been. We have about 2,000 stores. It's mainly US and Canada, and they're half corporate owned and half franchisee. So as
a mixture of retail and things like that. Yeah. And as you said, you were just touching on there that you came in with this retail background, but they were doing also treasury transformation with SAP and everything else. Talk us through that.
Absolutely. So I think with that separation there, and again, creating pretty much a standalone business, right. One of the things was we had a shared ERP system, which was SAP ECC in the past, but we had to go and decided to have our own standalone ERP where we since implemented S4 HANA, and we're pretty much kind of redesigning the entire process. The company is going to this massive transformation, obviously, from being a product manufacturing chemical business to a pure retail where, we're serving our customers, we are providing, services and also managing stores, a fleet of stores and whatnot. So with that, we a lot of the processes have been designed. Even I would say the mindset of the team and the culture, it's been changing more from a retail focus.
And what do you mean by that? You say it's changed in treasury terms. What was it like before that you were a big chemicals company and oil and things like that, and now it's more retail focused? How has that shifted?
Yeah, sure. So I think if you think about even from our cash flow cycle,
Right.
right? Before, I think it was more like a traditional, you would sell your product, you would invoice, collect within 30, 60 days, and you would be more, that was the majority how the whole revenue generation was coming from. Now we're literally on the day-to-day stores. We are, like for instance, and this is as a matter of fact one of the areas that we're investing a lot and improving its merchant service processing, right? That's a key now. Our revenue stream, even how we are not direct to consumer, basically, we're a lot more business to business. Now we're selling direct to consumer. So giving the support to the stores, from a day to day and the whole, again, as I mentioned, the cash flow cycle and how we're managing our business.
And obviously you've done this separation, Dennis, from, and you've carved yourselves out, which has led to lots of, I know we were talking about capital markets. That's been key to you guys. A lot of treasury professionals go, oh, I should do something. You've really been deep diving that. What's that been like?
Yeah, it's been a unique opportunity for me because with the separation and the way our debt covenants were, we had to complete a tender offer in our bond, which we, again, with the separation, we collected proceeds, which I, at one point when I first started, where we had an investment pool of cash that I was managing. And then we had to, at one point do a tender offer on the bond where then we had to pay off the bond and kind of restructure our whole capital strategy. And with that also allow us with the proceeds to, go back in the market and we have a share repurchase program that also Valvoline took advantage of with the proceeds. There was a very great, experience and opportunity for me as part of this new reshape of the capital structure for Valvoline.
And I know that when I've spoken to other treasury professionals, they're always, oh, I need to be doing some DC. I need to do debt capital markets. I have actually said to them, I think it's a very good to have, very nice to have, but it's not essential, is it? Because you can learn it. You've demonstrated that. What's it been like for you to learn all that stuff?
Yeah, it's been great. Well, I have a great treasurer that I work for. He's someone that knows a lot about it. And it's been great for me to learn and participate and he's been a good mentor for me. But I agree with you. It's not like a must have, but it's a nice to have. And again, having the privilege of having someone that knows what they're doing and just connecting the dots has been key for me.
Yeah, they can roll it out straight away.
Yeah.
And I was just joking with Dennis, you and I were, I actually wrote some questions. I said it's quite unusual, but I reflected back on the previous episode, and now you've shifted, as I say, from GameStop to here. Obviously, retail, treasury. Where do you think treasury can make a real impact? You really made an impact with treasury at GameStop. Now you're at Valvoline. Where can it make a difference? Surely it's just treasury, and you say, collect the cash. Thanks very much.
Yeah, I think when you're retail, I think retail, for you to be successful and profitable, a lot of things come into play. You have to be very nimble, very, dynamic, and your cost structure needs to be managed very well. And I think that's when treasury comes in, as far as, the areas that Treasury managing now, and I've managed a GameStop and I'm managing here, again, the banking structure, your bank fees becomes an important part of your bottom line, and how you are managing all your stores. Or you tend to have a lot more bank relationships to support your thousands of stores, across the country or even across the globe. I think also, as I touched a little bit, merchant services, right? Credit card. If you think about 90% of our revenue is collected by our, this day and age, everyone paying via credit card, debit card. So that's an area that has tend to have a lot of opportunities, as far as managing your costs and also providing value to our customers, making sure that the form of payments and the things that you're offering, which is directly tied to your business strategy, are aligned. So again, I think those are the areas that Treasury can have a huge impact directly right there at the bottom line, directly with the customer. But obviously, there's a lot of other things behind the scenes that typically we do.
And it's an interesting one. Surely it's straight through processing. It's easy, isn't it? They tap the money and you just collect it. It goes in the bank account. I'm saying this obviously tongue in cheek, but if someone is listening today, what are the problems or what's the word? What are the challenges that you see from this cash processing and that other treasuries might have, and how have you approached some of them?
Yeah. So I feel we tend to think, and I think as a consumer, and especially someone that's not within treasury or finance,
Yeah.
it's very uniform. You go to any store, you go any business, you swipe your card, and a transaction is completed. Yes, but behind the scenes, things can change dramatically. And to use again Valvoline as an example, we have a proprietary point of sale system. So when you come to our store, we will scan your VIN number. You're gonna come in, so we can check your vehicle maintenance schedule. What do you need? And we ask our customer, right? What you came to their store for? But then you check, is it due for you to, do X, Y, and Z? So we have, I guess what I'm trying to say, we have this proprietary system is developed to make sure we serve our customer and provide the best quality. But with that, it changes completely how we are integrating with, in this case, S4, or even integrating with the payment processor providers, right? Which is very different and unique than how we used to have it at GameStop, which it was very unique from even when we had it at Children's Place before. So there's a lot of into it. Like, to give you another unique example for Valvoline, we have a lot of fleet management accounts that represent a percentage of our business. We have to accept fleet cards, which is very different than the regular traditional credit card. So those are the things, again, that you have to take the time to understand, and make it, what's to ensure that we're optimizing and we're offering, again, at the end of the day, to our customers what they need, and also what will be, make sense to our product structure and our bottom line.
And I don't want to deep dive on that too much. I wanted to also get the most from yourself. I know that when we spoke, you love coaching team members, and we were then just talking. So Valvoline are actually based down in Lexington, Kentucky, I think you said, and then you traveled down, but you're actually based in New York. And then we were talking about you working, in 4 to 6 weeks, you're down there and stuff. What's it like when you're, when you are, or give us if you explain your work schedule, if you would, and then how you get the best out of your team.
Sure. So I think since I joined, we've grown our treasury team quite a bit. So right now, just to give a very quick rundown, we have capital markets that we do. We manage our bonds, our debt, our revolver. We do our cash flow forecasting, but also there's the cash management component, the merchant processor services, and whatnot. But we also I have a team that manages a cash application and some of bank account reconciliation and some other things. With that, we've been able to And again, with the transition, we'll be able to expand the role and hire new folks and make sure that we were with the right resources, to absorb and continue with the, with this growth trajectory here for Valvoline. So having said that, having a team that when I joined doubled in size, I try to be there as much as possible. I do work fully remote. I try to be present as much as possible. So I would say every 6 weeks, I travel to Lexington, Kentucky. And when I'm there, we try to, make sure that we spend time with the team, with my internal, external stakeholders, not only Treasury, but obviously with the entire finance team, with the business. Try to make sure that I align meetings with our financial partners if needed, make sure that if we have bank meetings, if we have any things that we're doing, projects that we're working on, try to align. And I think that works very well. We do have a hybrid. Valvoline, I think, has been very successful in implemented the hybrid work schedule. And when I'm there, luckily, we coordinate that everybody's in the office as well. So it's been working so far so good. I know that at GameStop I was also working remote.
Yeah.
The whole company was remote, especially in the heels of COVID. I have to say that things changed a little bit as people start to naturally go into a hybrid or back to the office. It's very different if everyone is remote or you are the one being only remote. But I think there's ways that you can work around. I try to be there. When I'm there, I try to be meeting with everyone as much as possible. I try to be as present as possible. And even if I'm remote, I try to participate via camera as much as I can.
And how do you effectively manage that? Because it's great that you are there in person every 4 to 6 weeks and seeing people and everything else. But, if you are remote and you're managing someone, any tips for other people, things that you've seen that have been very effective? Is it regular communication, or is it the cadence of, talking to people, or what is it?
Yeah, I think cadence is key. I try to, with my direct reports, every week, I tell them we must meet. Even if it's gonna be maybe 90% work related, 10% chit chat, or some weeks we're gonna do 90% chit chat, 10% work related.
Yeah,
I think you
up.
need to continue with that, connection. And another thing that I've been trying to be a little bit more purposeful with, and I know at first started to be to be on camera, because I think when you're remote and when you're doing Teams meeting, it's very easy to multitask. And, email starts to bubble up and messages. So I try to be at least avoid that, even for my own benefit, not only for my team's benefit as well, to being purposeful and being camera. I think it helps a lot to make sure like eye to eye as much as we can. But I think you said it well. I think the cadence is important. And I try to put it a structure where, those cliche things, right? Can you send me a list what you're working on? I think by that, it makes people stop and think, because I try to do that myself, right? Let me create a list. What did I like? Friday is a good example. Let me create a list what things are going on now for the week. What have I done, right? And then oftentimes they go like, oh, yeah, I haven't touched on this, and I was supposed to, or spending too much time on that versus. So I try to push it down with the team as well.
I think we skipped past a really major point there where you took also, which I think you brought up very well, was about being present. As you say, and I think I know that with some of my colleagues and stuff like that, if you're just on the phone call and it's a phone conference, but it's on Zoom, but you all have your camera switched off, you can be 30% present. You're listening in, but you're not actually doing it. The other day I talked to a client and it's funny, they said, I said, yeah, sorry about the background noise. I'm on a team meeting. And I was like, are you actually on? Like, oh yeah, I'm mostly leading it. I was like, well, it doesn't sound like it because you're talking to me, mate. I'm like, it was a bit weird actually being present. I think also I wouldn't say it's disrespectful, but I think it's actually not giving of yourself. Would you say?
I 100% agree. And again, I think all of us experience a very chaotic, change of flows with COVID and how things turned. And I think we all have to admit that we tended to, during those times and learning how to operate in this new environment, we were trying to multitask and do things. And I've been in situations where even like I would be listening to your podcast, but I was like, but I'm
only
doing
one. Dennis, it's the only thing to be listening to, please.
exactly. But then
The
I'm
podcast exists.
then you're doing something else, or even with, you're listening to a bank call about,
Yeah.
and then you're doing 3 other things. And I've been trying to, this is something I'm taking personally, like, okay, no, if I'm doing this because I need to take something out of it, if I'm choosing to have that time dedicated to this,
Yeah.
how can I really make the best and the most out of it? So
yeah, and choose to be there.
yes, and it's difficult, I'll tell you, but
so we're gonna wrap up the call because you've been very kind to give me this time again. But looking ahead, obviously challenging markets. A lot of the markets are all over the place and things. I know that, and again, going through my questions, looking at the future, obviously everyone's talking about AI, automation, and stuff like that, but less of that, more. What do you see as the next challenges coming up for Treasury in the next 2 to 5 years, or what even not even that, but the next 2 years? What do you see coming along?
Yeah, I think, again, you mentioned AI, the technology. I think the speed of information keeps just growing, getting faster and faster, right? If you think about, I remember, and I may have said on the earlier podcast, but before, you would create a cash flow forecast for a cash position. It could take you weeks to give your liquidity position to management, or you have a lot of transactional data that you had some time. Now we don't have the leisure to have. It has to be quick. You need that information right now for things that are happening now, not what happened last week. And that's where technology enablement, it's key part of this, right? How you can merge technology, AI, whatever the case is, but to something that will be meaningful and purpose for your role. These are the challenges. Again, we're implementing S4. We have implemented, but there's still a lot of work to be done. And as I mentioned, some of the areas that I am managing, which are more transactional driven areas, cash application, cash posting, how do you really leverage that technology, that machine learning but also I think it's training the new team and the new workforce, right? Now you need to be focused more on the technical, definitely on the strategic. How do you get all this data that's available and make a good use out of it? So I think these are the things that it's a little bit of a change in the mindset. And then you have the new young generation, the new workforce coming in, that learn very differently than how we've learned, right, in the past. We used to be learning just by reading books and sitting in the classroom. The new generation learns very different. They're like, it's a lot more interactive, and how to adapt that to be a good, you mentioned like coaching and helping the growth of the team. So those are the challenges, I think, again, how to get all this technology, AI, everything, and put it into work in a meaningful way for us as treasury professionals.
So you gave some good takeaways before, but once again, we'll put your LinkedIn details in the show notes. Final takeaways for today. If someone's out there, we get regular listeners, obviously, like your good self, which is great, and you've heard people giving takeaways. Any reflections? You've made this recent move, it's been a positive thing, or what for the listeners today, what should they be thinking about, if you like?
I've learned a lot in the last few years, and even like changing jobs, been trying to, again, be more patient about things. I think the world moves in a very fast pace. The industry, it moves in a very fast pace, and we tend to jump on that bandwagon and try to, just move as fast as we can. But I've been trying to take more time to, grow and understand and be patient about it. Like in my role right now at Valvoline, how to really understand the business, the company, the strategy, how to really make a difference, not only in treasury, but also overall on the organization. So again, just been trying to be more purposeful as we're talking about the participation in meetings, the participation in everything, just trying to be more intent on with everything that I do and what I'm gonna be doing in my career. I think information is out there for everyone. I think you everyone can be as an expert as you are, but I think if you're intentional about things and you understand, that's where I think you're gonna make the difference these days, and the participation and interacting with people. I think that's still what's gonna make a difference going forward.
Yeah, well, that's the key to Treasury, isn't it? So amazing.
Yes.
So, Dennis, thank you very much. Looking forward to seeing you in person. I know we're doing it virtually, but actually, shaking your hand, having a beer or two, and seeing you very soon. Thank you very much, sir.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you.
Pleasure.
I hope you enjoyed this week's episode just as much as I did recording it with another amazing guest. And feel free to sign up through wherever you get your podcasts, through Spotify, Apple Podcasts, wherever it is, and keep on listening. Thank you very much for your support. Now, before we move on, I wanted to let you know how you can stay ahead in the Treasury world. So you'll see in our show notes how you can sign up for our Treasury Recruitment newsletter. It'll give you immediate access to our 2025 Treasury Salary Trends white paper. In there, we've got assessment of things coming from the salary survey, but we actually go back over the past 20 years. We look at some of the insights there. We then also can give you some strategic career advice. We give you bonuses like access to CV and resume templates, things to basically help you with your Treasury career. If you go there, we'll put it in the show notes, but you go to our newsletter on our website. As well as the newsletter, you might be looking for your next role. If you are, well, that's what we do, and we do it best. So reach out to us if you want to. For the US roles, you go to joe@treasuryrecruitment.com. For European roles, you go to katie@treasuryrecruitment.com. For UK and more senior positions, come to me, mike@treasuryrecruitment.com, or go to the website, treasuryrecruitment.com. Feel free to connect with us in person. We're going to be doing a number of upcoming events and conferences throughout 2025. Got more news coming your way about some exciting plans we've got as well. So give us a call, drop us an email. Thanks for your support. We'll see you at the next event. Until next week. Many thanks.